So, the recent remake of the original Super Mario RPG was basically the surprise of the decade for me, in the best way possible. I genuinely couldn't believe Nintendo actually wanted people to remember it existed. I've been a huge fan of the Mario RPGs for basically my entire life. The third video I ever produced on this channel was devoted to them, but I've actually never gotten to experience the very first one until this remake, and it was just such a treat, I had to talk about it for a bit. I think what astounded me most right out of the gate was how instantly nostalgic it all felt somehow, despite having never played the original version. Granted, I did have some familiarity with it due to cultural osmosis. I'd seen plenty of footage of it. That title screen image of the giant sword impaling Bowser's castle is iconic. I'd heard a lot of the music here and there, and I had at least seen many of its delightful boss characters, as well as its infamous super boss Culex, but I'd never actually experienced it firsthand in its entirety. And yet, once I was in it, it immediately felt safe and homey somehow, like an old comfort game I was returning to after many years. And I think the reason for that is that everything about this game's design and atmosphere is evocative of the period of time in which it originally released, and that I do have plenty of first-hand nostalgia for. Super Mario RPG is in many ways a relic of a bygone age in gaming that I've missed dearly. A time when the Mario brand was allowed to be experimental and imaginative in a way that's only just now beginning to return to us after over a decade of startling absence. And while I think I slightly prefer the more defined, Mario-esque take on the Mushroom Kingdom's cultural aesthetic, architecture, and color palette, which was solidified in the earlier Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi games, 7 Stars definitely had an atmosphere unique to it, which I felt was very much worth experiencing. You can definitely tell that it was a collaboration with Square, as the bulk of the towns of the Mushroom Kingdom have this very Final Fantasy look to them, what with the classic fairy tale Bavarian-style architecture of the houses and the medieval graystone castle that Peach lives in. And just in general, it was so refreshing to return to a take on the world of Mario that was populated with, say it with me, unique original characters, and even Toads in different outfits. What a concept! Now don't get me wrong, the world of 7 Stars certainly has your typical Mario staples, with its Goombas, Shy Guys, and so forth, although I love its take on the classic Koopa Troopas, with them being decked out in some medieval knight attire. But even beyond the extra-dimensional Smithy Gang invaders, who brought a delightfully foreign atmosphere to the game, there are plenty of wild, original Mushroom Kingdom natives, like the thieving velociraptor thing Croco, the shark pirate captain Jonathan Jones, the cloud people of Nimbusland, and of course, the unforgettable weirdo Booster. And all this is to say nothing of the core playable cast, which brings the best of both worlds in terms of original and legacy characters. Mallow and Geno bring that spark of unpredictability and originality, while Bowser and Peach make their playable debuts outside of multiplayer-oriented spin-off games. And gosh, 7 Stars Bowser is just great. Early subscribers to this channel may have heard this from me before, but I'm such a nut about Bowser-Mario team-ups in the RPGs. They're by no means mandatory for me to enjoy them, but they give the games they do occur in such a boost in my book. 7 Stars was basically the progenitor to Bowser's characterization in the RPGs, and something I find interesting about this game is that you can totally see the groundwork being laid, but you can also see where it developed and diverged from there. This iteration of Bowser introduced this goofy, self-important, image-conscious, prideful portrayal of Mario's arch-nemesis, and yet he also has a somewhat gentler and more personable side that I think only really comes out here. Obviously, I love everything about the scene where he joins you, or rather, you join him, as he'd have you believe. But I was struck by other little moments, such as him giving his blessing to Goomhilda to retire from his troupe, and actually personally helping out with his castle's reconstruction during the ending. I don't know, it was cute, and I really liked it. But I'm also okay with the more modern take on his character, who still cares about his minions but is a bit more dismissive and possessive of them, and probably wouldn't participate in the grunt work of a construction project, for example. Something else I liked about 7 Star's handling of Bowser, though, is that it is actually still, to this day, the only game, aside from Sparks of Hope and like 5 minutes of Origami King, in which he actually shares the battlefield with Mario. And that's something I really want to see return in a proper in-house RPG someday. He stands beside Mario in the cutscenes of Super Paper Mario, but that game's mechanics only allow for one hero to be in play at a time. And in Bowser's Inside Story, he takes to the battlefield solo as well, and doesn't even realize he's even in any sort of alliance with Mario for the entirety of the game due to plot shenanigans. Those games are still great, obviously, for a myriad of reasons, but 7 Stars made me realize what a difference actually seeing them stand back-to-back in battle makes, and I really hope it can happen again in a future RPG with a more competent and ambitious narrative than Sparks of Hope. To clarify, I do think that Sparks of Hope is crazy fun, but the writing did not impress at all. Bowser tangent aside, though, 7 Star's most refreshing elements to me personally were the original characters and atmosphere, and the effect they had on the narrative. While it was admittedly a bit simple and bare bones, it was still leaps and bounds above anything Paper Mario did after Super, or Mario and Luigi did after Inside Story. I know a lot of you Zoomers swear by the Sticker Star era of Paper Mario because it can be slightly fun sometimes and it's all you've ever known, and I'm all about accepting games on their own terms for what they are rather than what they're not, believe me. But I think it's important you expose yourselves to the classics which we millennials refuse to shut up about so that you understand why we refuse to shut up about them, so that you understand what exactly has been lost all this time. Even Origami King felt more like a series of set pieces to me than an actual cohesive journey, and that's something 7 Stars managed to nail back in 1996. To put that in perspective, that's when the dinosaurs roamed the Earth. There were literally cavemen writing more involved narratives than Nintendo does these days. Origami King had some memorable places, but 7 Stars has memorable places and people. Honestly, yes, I did find it a little overly terse and simple at times, but for the love of God, at least it was there. It's an actual adventure. Things actually happen. The opening does the Symphony of the Night thing, where it sets the mood by using what would be the finale of a typical Mario game as its intro. Then, following that, a greater evil appears that overpowers the usual antagonist and scatters his forces, forcing him to begrudgingly work with his heroic rival later on. Mario meets and teams up with a lost prince who doesn't even know he's a lost prince, a star spirit inhabiting a doll who is somehow able to manifest the powers that the doll's owner imagines him to have, which is just so cool. I think Geno could get an entire spin-off to himself playing with this concept as he inhabits different dolls to manifest different powers, but I digress. And then, of course, Mario eventually recruits Bowser and Peach later on, essentially building up anticipation for the more predictable legacy characters. And the way they're each recruited is meaningful and memorable as well. Mario helps Mallow retrieve a valuable item from a thief. Mario hops in to assist Geno with Bowyer since he took the liberty of dispatching the boss on his own. Bowser joins after losing track of what remaining followers he had in order to save Peach from Booster because, damn it, Peach is his woman. And Peach sneaks out of her own castle to join the party after being rescued from Booster and brought home. The group travels from town to town, saving their citizens from a local Smithy gang peril while collecting the scattered pieces of the Star Road. And along the way, the party members interact sporadically. Mallow even has to choose between staying with his real family after their reunion or risking it all to help finish the mission. And Bowser has to be talked into helping out with the final dungeon because his original goal was simply to return to his castle. He only even agrees to help save the world because the Smithy Gang's portal into the Mushroom Kingdom was opened above his castle, meaning that's the entry point from which their forces are flooding in, and there's no way for him to reclaim his keep without putting a stop to them anyway. I know I keep going on mini tangents about Bowser, but I'm just such a sucker for a well-written villain team-up, and 7 stars absolutely delivers. Of course, the game has its flaws too, and while it has definitely earned a spot as a new comfort game that I will be returning to from time to time, I do think that the RPGs which followed it improved on it significantly in a number of areas. For one thing, 7 stars has got to be the single easiest RPG I have ever played by an enormous margin, even easier than Pokemon, I think. I wasn't doing anything special in my playthrough. I wasn't grinding, I wasn't looking up try-hard optimal play strats, and yet I absolutely bulldozed through every single fight with minimal to no effort. Trash mobs and bosses alike. I found many bosses went down in just a few turns, in fact. The combat is extremely simple. This is mitigated slightly by the importance of action commands, but regardless, it was neither as strategic as Paper Mario, nor as engaging as Mario and Luigi. I need to emphasize again that this game predates those entries, so I hold nothing against it, but it does show its age in these areas. I also felt that special moves in general needed to be rebalanced to be more worthwhile. At first, I was a bit nervous about the tiny FP pool that everybody shares, combined with the often weirdly high FP costs of many special moves, but it turned out that most special moves are near worthless anyway, because all special moves pull from the magic stat, which is significantly lower than the physical stat for the 3 primary damage dealers, Mario, Geno, and Bowser. What this means is that even against bosses, regular attacks are literally your hardest hitting moves most of the time, which is insane and just feels wrong if you've played literally any other turn-based RPG ever. It also basically means that not only are you barely busting out special moves against bosses, but you're constantly dispatching trash mobs with your strongest attacks at no cost, causing every single fight from the beginning of the game to the very end to play out in a more or less identical fashion. You just hammer the standard attack option and then try to nail the guard command when the enemy attacks. But even if you don't nail it, it's fine. They don't hit that hard anyway. Also, weird nitpick, but it kind of bothered me that Bowser doesn't have a single move or weapon which invokes his fire breath. That's like his thing, right? Am I crazy? Is breathing fire not his thing? Sparks of Hope also didn't give him a single fire breath move. What is up with this? Anyway, the one saving grace in all this is that every single weapon for every single character actually has unique animations and unique action command timings. So even though you're basically just using normal attacks all the time, even against bosses, the visuals and button presses actually get changed up with relative frequency, keeping some aspect of the combat fresh, at least. Having said all that, you can at least always choose your action and your target, which is more than can be said of Sticker Star or Color Splash. Heyo! And the incredibly breezy nature of the battles contribute to the game's brevity and feel-good atmosphere, I suppose, which does make it easy to return to. 7 stars is a very brisk RPG, and the perfect RPG for newcomers and young players. The only way I can imagine someone struggling is if they're just unbelievably terrible at nailing the action commands. On top of this, you can switch out party members at any time mid-battle without even losing a turn. I personally love this because it's just a convenient option to have and helps make it feel like all 5 characters are really participating in every battle, despite only 3 being active at once. But it does make an already easy game even easier by allowing you to keep 3 damage dealers out until you actually need healing, and then only switch a healer in for a turn before continuing your onslaught. What I did feel was a bridge too far was even allowing KO'd or incapacitated incapacitated characters to use their turn to switch out, rather than losing their turn like in pretty much every other RPG ever. This is not normal, and is just another factor that ensures you will never, ever be on the back foot in this game, aside from going into Culex unprepared, I guess. Anyway, with my journey complete and the Star Road fixed, my wish right now is simply to see a return to form for Mario RPGs with some actually new entries. Make no mistake, I am super grateful that this remake exists, and unbelievably stoked for the upcoming remake of Thousand Year Door. It is, in the eyes of many, the single greatest Mario RPG ever made by a wide margin, and with it finally being salvaged from the largely lost GameCube library, you Zoomers officially have no excuse not to try it. It is so much better than everything you have been exposed to, and you can take that to the bank. Finally understand why the rest of us won't shut up about it, or accept Sticker Star and its ilk as replacements. But these two remakes are only the first step. Making timeless classics available to modern audiences is great, and I want to emphasize that I don't take it for granted, and I'm not trying to move the goalpost. But the real test will be what comes next. Is this really the return of Mario RPGs, or is it just a little side trip down memory lane while Intelligent Systems cooks up their next gimmicky, brand-sanitized shit show? I suppose only time will tell, but here's hoping. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to leave a like and consider subscribing. And if you made it this far, then leave a comment telling me what your favorite Mario RPG is and why. I say this all the time, but it's true. I make these videos to have a conversation, and I really do engage with my audience. I'm not just asking for comments to feed the algorithm. My personal favorite Mario RPG is The Thousand Year Door, followed very closely by Superstar Saga. I think they're absolutely peak. They each have unparalleled world building with memorable original casts, extremely fleshed out gameplay mechanics in both the field and in battle, and they both make phenomenal use of Bowser despite him not being a recruitable ally. Inside Story gets an honorable mention for Bowser's role in it, but I didn't feel its narrative was as strong as in earlier entries. Anyway, let me know what you think, and thanks again for stopping by. Peace out.
Thank you so much for playing my game.